With the Thai economy needing a massive injection of capital, the question is, will Thaksin's government be able to find the necessary funding to deliver on its election promises? Stuart Pallister, CBC, Thailand. China's just too big a market to ignore, especially if you have ambitions to be a global player. Stuart Pallister, CBC Asia, Shanghai. But this time, there's been a noticeable lack of griping, perhaps a sign that this year, APEC might just have got it right. Stuart Pallister, CBC Asia, Auckland, New Zealand. The protesters didn't manage to stop the meetings, but they did prevent some delegates from getting into the complex. I and about 30 other delegates had to be flown in by helicopter. Others came by boat. Some less scrupulous hotels, though, have decided to raise their rates to almost astronomical levels. With these pressing issues in mind, the 11 oil-producing nations of OPEC will meet to discuss oil quotas and the world's energy needs. Join me on Wednesday and Thursday for live reports on the OPEC meeting in Osaka, Japan.
Our senior correspondent Stuart Pallister is on the ground tracking the OPEC meeting. Stuart?
Well, Grace, it looks as though the heat was really taken out of this meeting a day or two before it got underway, when the Iraqis said, yes, we will allow unconditional access by the UN weapons inspectors. That took the pressure off this particular meeting. It was then a question of bringing the Saudis on board, and the majority view here was, let's keep things very much as they are. There are just too many uncertainties at the moment. 2 bombs exploded outside the popular Sari Club, bringing death and devastation. At least 180 people were killed, with Australians and Indonesians making up the biggest groups. But while Australia mourns innocence lost, politicians, including Prime Minister John Howard, have struggled to express the horror of the attack.
Stuart Pallister joins us live. Stuart?
Well, Martin, the word is at the moment the Indonesian police are questioning pretty intensively 2 Indonesians with regard to Saturday night's bomb blast here, just a short distance from where we're standing at the moment. It was a demonstration at one of Indonesia's top private universities that turned deadly. But earlier in the day, it had all been very different. The mood, good-natured. But then the students moved out onto the streets from their campus in West Jakarta. The tension was palpable. The students want political reform, and they're not going to give up easily. The student protests are expected to intensify next week. Analysts say the government's caught between a rock and a hard place. While it's talking about political reform, it doesn't want to be seen to be caving in to the students' demands. Many believe Indonesia will have to implement political reforms, and a major overhaul of the system may be needed. The students are likely to keep the pressure on until the authorities give a clear indication that they do take their demands seriously. Stuart Pallister, CNBC Asia Business News, Jakarta. It may be the calm between the storms, some semblance of normality returning to Jakarta. But throughout the city and its suburbs, a trail of destruction. Block after block of businesses in ruins. Those that survived, the ones owned by indigenous Indonesians. Businesses built up by ethnic Chinese are being destroyed. The scale of the destruction is immense, and the cost of the damage is already estimated to be well into the hundreds of billions of rupiah. It's going to be many years before the capital, Jakarta, gets back to what it was, especially as foreign investors and ethnic Chinese won't be rushing back in anytime soon. From banks to department stores, discos to fast food outlets, they've all been hit by looting and rioting.
I've been trying to think myself, what city of significance in the world in the last 50 years has experienced something this other than in the middle of a war? And I can't think of any.
President Suharto and the military are in charge for now, but when the storm hits again, loyalties will be severely tested. Stuart Pallister, CNBC Asia Business News, Jakarta. Late Friday night, hundreds of soldiers move in to clear protesters from the grounds of the Parliament building. The operation, well planned and largely without violence. Questions remain as to whether the students have the resolve to press on with their fight for reform, now that Suharto has gone. But as the students were bussed out of the Parliament compound, they clearly felt they'd won a victory. And although the armies managed to clear the Parliament building, the protests are far from over. Stuart Pallister, CNBC Asia Business News. The Malaysian flag with one slight addition, a picture of ousted Deputy Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. But the euphoria didn't last long. This protester quickly detained, and he wasn't alone. On this particular day, around 24 people would be arrested in the centre of the capital. Several thousand people had gathered near Merdeka Square on Saturday. They were told to disperse, and when they didn't, riot police forced the issue. They used water cannon and had tear gas at the ready. The protesters were driven back, further and further away from the square, until they disappeared into the night. A day earlier, a similar shadow play, but this time the scene, the National Mosque, close by Merdeka Square. Riot police quickly cleared protesters from the mosque and its grounds following Friday prayers. Despite the protests and demonstrations in the city centre, life goes on as normal elsewhere. Few signs here of a country in turmoil. And just hours after the protest at the National Mosque, the Prime Minister was seemingly in a relaxed mood as he toured an exhibition and was encouraged to try some food. Afterwards, though, he got his teeth into questions from foreign journalists. He was asked whether it had been a difficult decision to send riot police into the mosque.
I don't know whether the riot police went into the mosque, but I know the rioters went into the mosque. How do you stop rioting inside the mosque if you don't go in to stop it? Can you do it by remote control?
The protests look set to continue. The question now is, will they gain momentum or just peter out? Stuart Pallister, CNBC Asia, Kuala Lumpur. They were at Petaling Jaya for the second appearance in court of the Prime Minister's former heir apparent, Anwar Ibrahim. Some of Anwar's children were also there, and as Anwar was led into the courthouse, the bruising around his left eye was clearly visible. A medical report obtained by CNBC confirms the injuries to his face and neck and states that he'd been assaulted. It did not say by whom or how. Anwar has been charged with 10 counts of corruption and sodomy. He's pleaded not guilty to all of them. The question now is, will he be able to get a fair trial? Stuart Pallister, CNBC Asia, Petaling Jaya, Malaysia. A death march for East Timor as protesters wind their way through Auckland city centre. The demonstrators here have no doubt as to who's to blame. They want Indonesia to call a halt to the killings. The United Nations has set a deadline for Indonesia to guarantee security in Timor, a point stressed by the British Foreign Secretary. He flew into Auckland specially for talks on Timor.
The crisis in East Timor is grave and is getting worse. All of us have been shocked by the brutality. All of us share the alarm and dismay of our people at what is happening there.
Indonesia's top economics minister is already here. The president won't be. But that won't stop APEC leaders talking about Timor.
I think the next 24 or 48 hours are quite critical. Of course, if Indonesia can bring order, that is preferred. If they can't and they were to request assistance, it is clear to me that there's a growing consensus that the international community would wish to help if those circumstances arose.
Once and if the Security Council authorizes a peacekeeping, Australia, New Zealand and the US could within days have a force in East Timor.
Are you confident that you will get support?
For a military intervention, I'm not confident, but for economic sanctions, arms embargo, I am confident. Indonesia will be for a long time thoroughly ostracized in the international community. They should no longer have any pretense that they have any say in world affairs, in regional affairs. Indonesia has become an embarrassment for their own neighbors in ASEAN.
Do you feel as though you've had your hands tied politically, given that you've had to make compromises from the start?
Well, compromise are compromise, you see. Compromise for the interest of the country is important.
Nobody can tell us how it's going to affect all societies and how it's going to affect our society. So we take it one step at a time.
You've spoken about opening up society in terms of economics and so on, but what about the political side? We've also seen warnings politically that, for example, the Prime Minister was talking about annihilating opponents. You've spoken in the past, or have been quoted in the past, as saying we will politically destroy opponents.
When we have a destructive person who can damage the system, we politically set out to degrade him. I have no regrets that I said that of one of my opponents in Parliament. He was out to damage the system, and I think we have effectively negated him.
Some of ours have had, fortunately these investments have been small, but they've been rocky. A lot of small entrepreneurs here that do very well. And the energy level in China and the ingenuity of these small companies and the speed with which they work sharpens the edge for everyone.
She's savvy, smart, and in charge of one of America's top corporations, and she's only in her mid-40s, a super saleswoman who recently became CEO of Hewlett-Packard, even though she had no experience of the computer industry. But mention the fact that she's a woman, and the atmosphere becomes distinctly frosty, and that despite the fact that HP itself includes this Fortune magazine cover in its press kits.
I think it is more important for me to focus on the business of HP and leading HP as successfully as I can, rather than to focus on whether I'm a man or a woman. And I hope over time others will do the same.
You said you don't expect ownership to change, but say in 5 years' time, will Mike Bloomberg still be at the helm?
Well, I'm 58 years old. You know, you don't live forever, and I think the likelihood of me still being at the helm is not great. The likelihood of still owning the company is greater. In my company, I'm trying to delegate new things all the time and wind up doing different things. But eventually, I'd like to devote my life to public service. And I think that the 7,000 employees of the company have a right to get new management.
Are you then considering running for the position of mayor of New York?
I think the mayor's job of New York, it's the second best job in the country. The first best job is up for grabs this year, and I've not chosen to go after that being Bill Clinton's job. We'll see.
If you're born here in Manila's Fishport area, you probably have little way of dragging yourself out of the poverty that's engulfed this area. Fishing does provide a living, and others get by doing what they can. The situation may be desperate, but it's not totally hopeless. Rogelio Martinez, who works for an architectural firm, has been living here for almost 20 years. He, for one, hasn't given up. A tough life?
A little difficult.
A little difficult?
A little difficult, yeah.
That may be something of an understatement, but he's hopeful that the new government will deliver on its promises to combat poverty. The new administration has already set out its stall with a series of programs aimed at reducing poverty and creating jobs. Now it has to produce the goods.
At the very least, we would like to create 1 million jobs in agriculture over the next 3 years. If we can create 3 million more jobs in services and manufacturing, that would be great.
Well, how far will this go in towards alleviating poverty?
Well, certainly farther than we've gone the past few years.
The problems are huge. The government wants a school in every village in the next few years. That will mean putting up around 5,000 buildings. A tall order, but Arroyo maintains her plans are achievable. The ADB, which has some 50 ongoing projects in the Philippines, says some hard decisions now need to be taken.
Many of the governments before had the same agenda and did not succeed. So the hope is on this administration to make a difference.
Here at the port area of Manila, only 1 child in 4 actually goes to school. Even though education's free, families can't afford to send their children. But the population of this Catholic country keeps on growing. Family planning isn't exactly a priority. That means families are having more and more children that many of them can't afford to feed or clothe. More and more people are coming into the cities to escape rural poverty, only to find themselves still stuck in the poverty trap. There's been plenty of talk in the past about poverty alleviation in the Philippines. The challenge now is to do something about it. Stuart Pallister, CNBC, Manila. Tens of thousands of Indian professionals queue for US visas each year, intent on finding a better life in the United States. But the man who brought US President Bill Clinton to Hyderabad in southern India is hoping to turn the tide around.
As on today, there is a brain drain from India to America. Now I want to have brain gain from America to India.
And it seems it's already starting to happen, although the numbers are small.
In the past, a gone was a bygone case. They never thought back of India. Some of them never even telephoned here or returned here for 10 years, 12 years. But now I see most of them visiting here for business purpose.
Take Jyoti Agarwala, who runs a venture capital firm in America. She's just been in India on the lookout for opportunities.
My heart is in both places. I'm as much at home in New York as I am here.
But while she still chooses to live in New York, other successful Indian Americans now maintain homes in both the US and India. Here in Electronic City outside Bangalore, the CEO of a software firm lived for years in the States, but he too decided to return.
I felt that I could do more exciting things here. The US already has a standard, things are set. I felt that there was a lot more challenge doing things here.
He says he hasn't looked back and has no regrets. Joy Nandi came back to India from the States 4 years ago. The opportunities were just too great to ignore.
Opportunities as well as the fact that I wanted to do something in India.
Nandi works here in International Tech Park on the outskirts of Bangalore. A gleaming complex, it symbolises India's aspirations. But just around the corner from the tech park, it's another world. Life here can have its frustrations.
There are surely challenges, be it infrastructure challenges, be it professional challenges, be it the bureaucracy in the government, but there needs to be a step-by-step change some places. And if you can contribute to a significant part of a revolution that's happening in a country, I think that's much better.
There's no doubt that the Indians who have returned are boosting the economy.
The flow is outward. A lot of people are going out then coming back in. But for every person who comes back in, he creates opportunities for a number of people. The bigger ones create opportunities for thousands, and we are at a level where we create opportunities for hundreds.
And with many more entrepreneurs likely to come home, that can only be good for India and its rapidly developing technology industries. Stuart Pallister, CNBC Asia, Bangalore, India. Here in a remote area on the borders of China's Sichuan and Yunnan provinces, it's the women of the Mosuo tribe who rule the roost. It's said to be one of the last remaining matriarchal societies in China, if not in Asia. Twelve-year-old Yajia is getting ready for the big day. She belongs to the Mosuo tribe. Today is a festival known locally as Gamgar. This is the day the Mosuo people walk the mountain and pay their respects to their spirit protector, who just happens to be female. In this tribe, it's the women who bring up the children, they own the property, they make the decisions. The men, well, they usually live with their mothers. The Mosuo have a tradition called Asha, or walk-in marriage. Walk-in because the women take lovers. There's no formal marriage as such. Yajia's mother, whose own Asha days are over, says the men still have responsibilities. They work mainly as fishermen or farmers and help to pay the bills if they can.
Even if I were a man, I'll still have to work to support the family.
On a day like today, though, the men mainly sit around and drink. One farmer we spoke to said he liked the Morsor custom of the women being in charge.
It's very good. In our Morsor society, women take care of all the family matters.
In this Morsor household, it's the grandmother, Dasher Ma, now in her 70s, who makes the decisions.
What we do, where we go, are all decided by her.
The plan is for her daughter, Dema, to take over when she's no longer able to run the household. No one's quite sure how the Morsor matriarchal customs came about. They just did.
It's just a custom that Morsor people do this.
The family says on average, households here only earn about $250 a year. Even so, Doma says life's getting better and tourism is helping.
Now roads are being built. We have television, we have better clothes and better food.
And by watching TV, the Morsor can see another way of life, one that their young, educated daughters find attractive. So much so that 13-year-old Na Jie says she plans to leave home as soon as she can.
I want to travel around the world.
She wants to be a teacher. I want to go away, she says, and the further the better.
I'm tired of living here.
Ya Jia also wants to leave. Like Na Jie, she's getting an education, but she too has seen the promise of a better life on television.
We're very busy at home. On television, everywhere's fun.
And that's why she too will move away. She also wants to be a teacher, maybe in Beijing.
It's no fun here.
If more and more young people do decide to leave this remote valley in search of a better life elsewhere, the days of this matriarchal society could be numbered. That's some time off though. For now, it's the Morsor women who are very much in control. Stuart Pallister, CNBC Asia, Lugu Lake, Yunnan Province in China.